Morning, welcome to Alright What's Next. Today we're going to work on making a cutting board. I've done a little research on the internet, looking around, and apparently there really aren't any videos out there at all for making cutting boards, so I think I'm going to be the first one. We're going to make a landscape themed, inspired, whatever you want to call it, cutting board. I'm using ash and walnut. In a perfect world, I would have these already at like 10 inches wide, because we're going to double these up and then we're going to cut a pattern out on the bandsaw. Couldn't find any 10 inches. If they were 10 inches wide, I could get 2 cutting boards out of one board, but we're only going to be able to get 1 out of it. So the first thing you want to do, cut your boards to 16 inches in length. That'll be the overall length of our cutting board when we're done. And then the width is going to be roughly 9 inches. So to do that, what we want to do, put this board up on here and we're going to slide it around. And then we'll measure the width of both the boards. And we'll start it, let's see, we'll make it at 9 3/4 inches. That way we've got a little wiggle room here. Put a line there. And a line there. Okay, so we know where this is going to go onto here. What we're going to do, take a little bit of double-sided tape. We're going to stick this board on top of this board. This isn't really the best double-sided tape for this application because it's foamy, so it's kind of a bitch to get back off once you get it stuck on there. But it works, and it's what I've got. Alright, line up your lines. Stick it down. Alright, so this is going to be the most uneven cutting board. It's going to be really awkward trying to cut a tomato on there. Okay, what we want to do to get a landscape pattern, we don't want to go over top of where our ash stops right here. We're going to go ahead and we're going to draw kind of a wavy pattern. We want to figure, maybe put in a decent sized hill. Drop it down, maybe a little bit of a medium sized hill, and then drop it down. Put a low rise hill here. Let's refine these shapes a little bit. I don't know how well that shows up on camera. It probably doesn't show up at all because it's not the best camera in the world. But it'll be more evident once we cut these. So by putting the line on here, we're going to cut both these boards at the same time so that this section will drop down to the ash and the lines will line up. If you try and cut them individually, you'll never get them freaking cut right. So hopefully you really can't see the pencil marks on camera because I did a really crap job of following them. But that's all right. It'll still work out. So now we just need to separate these pieces on tape. Don't need that piece. And we don't need that piece. All right. Thing is, when you cut anything, you're always going to have that kerf mark or whatever the crap you call it. The amount of wood that the blade removes. So to fill that kerf mark, we're going to use a piece of veneer. I picked this giant roll up at Menards. If you get veneer, you want to make sure that it is the type that doesn't have a glue back to it. It's going to be the type of veneer that you would have to apply glue. I don't know the glue back. I don't know if that would work or not because I don't know if it would be toxic glue. With this being a cutting board, you certainly wouldn't want anything toxic on there. All we're going to do, take your board, now you want to make it a little bit longer on both ends because it's got to follow a curve. And veneer just cuts pretty easy with a pair of scissors. All right, we got this, we got this, we got a strip of veneer that, where the hell did my strip of veneer go? We got a strip of veneer. We need wood glue. Since this is going to be a cutting board, it's going to be in contact with food, plus, you know, you probably want to wash it from time to time, otherwise it might get freaking gross. Type Bond 3 wood glue, it is relatively waterproof. It's meant indirect, non-long exposure to moisture. So it's like don't throw it in the sink and let it soak for 2 days because it'll probably break the glue bond. But it is waterproof, so you can put it in the sink, wash it, take it out and dry it, and it'll be fine. Plus, it is FDA approved for indirect food contact. That doesn't mean go ahead and squirt this on your freaking peanut butter sandwich. And it probably wouldn't kill you, but it'll taste like shit. So let's get some plastic out and we'll set some clamps up and then we'll glue it. So when you're clamping, you want to put a little bit of force on these bottom clamps, but not too much, and then put your top clamp on across here. If you don't put the top clamp on here, if you just have all three of them on the bottom, you start cranking it down, this thing's just going to freaking spring apart on you. Goddamn satanic accordion or some shit. All right, clamps are set up. Let's go ahead and throw some glue on here. Yeah, having a third hand at this point in time would be freaking helpful. I'll make sure your boards are relatively even. Then go ahead. All right, now I just got to let that dry. We'll move on to the next stage. All right, so it's a new day. Glue's set up, got them all the clamps. Went ahead and I glued up the two scrap pieces out of it. Gonna make like maybe a little cheese board type thing, cut up blocks of cheese, summer sausage, whatever on there. Better than just wasting the two pieces of expensive hardwood. But I was on the way out to my shop this morning and I looked out and seen that my freaking truck had a flat tire, left rear tire was flat. And it's out in the pasture hooked up to the horse trailer. So it couldn't be any further away from my garage and all my tools and still be on the property. So I can't use my impact because I don't have 1,000 feet of air line to reach out there, and I don't have a good battery powered one that can take lug nuts off. So I had to drag a freaking floor jack out there. It's a 2.5 ton floor jack. That's its lift capacity, not how much it actually weighs. But it's an old, like probably 1970s floor jack made out all steel, not fancy aluminum like they make now. So it weighs a lot. And if anybody's ever tried to drag one of these sons of bitches out across the freaking grass, it sucks. So that's how I started my day before coming out here to the shop to work on this. So enough of my bitching. Now we've got these things out of the clamps. Had to clean up the back side of it. Just got a chisel and just went through and scraped off all the glue and everything off here so we can get a relatively flat surface because we need to run this through the planer. This stuff, we don't have to worry about scraping this off. The planer will take that crap down just fine. We'll have to I want to make some really shallow cuts with the planer. I'm going to try and minimize the amount of snipe that you get when you run it through a face plane. The snipe is when it enters, it goes into the first roller, and before the second roller can pick it up, it has a tendency of putting a little tiny divot in your leading edge and your trailing edge, especially on the trailing edge, because when it leaves, it kind of wants to kick that board up a little bit, and then blades hit it at a different angle, and it'll leave a little tiny divot. But I'm going to see if I can just run it through and make really light passes, and hopefully completely minimize or remove any of that snipe that comes out of there. There's other ways of doing it. You can make a sled that these things can sit in with rails that extend out. That way when it runs through, the rollers are on the rails and your piece stays level and you won't get the snipe until you get to the outside of the rails. And it's really slick. They're not overly hard to do, but I don't want to spend the time to do it. So we're going to start with this little whatever cheese board thing. We'll give that a try and see what it looks like. All right, so I don't know what happened, but whatever reason, my sound stopped recording.
So we're gonna just do an overlay here real quick. So right now what I'm doing is I just got done running it through the planer. Everything is looking good. Just checking to make sure all the lines are lined up. Yeah, it looks good. Got a drink beer. Everything's nice and level. What we got to do is put a juice groove or whatever you want to call it in. On the main cutting board, we're gonna route a groove all the way around it. That way, when you're cutting your tomatoes, vegetables, whatever, there's a groove that the juice will go into, so it doesn't go all over the counter. So I already had a pre-made pattern that I've used on previous cutting boards. We'll just double side tape that down. Just like that. And then we'll route it. All right. When you start routing, you can get a plate that goes on most routers, a universal freaking mounting plate that's got different bushings that'll ride against that that pattern that I made, and you put your bit in, and then you just follow the pattern. Goes around, makes nice, easy, freaking quick cut. This particular router that I got, I really like this one because when you turn it on, it just slowly builds up the speed instead of like instantaneously just going to speed, and it jerks to where it just slowly builds up. It's really nice. But see, now we got the juice groove in there. Now what we got to do, we have to round off the edges, the corners on the main cutting board. We got to round off the corners on the cheese board, or whatever you want to call it, and we got to cut a handle into the cheese board. So to round them off, I just grab that roll of double-sided tape. We're just going to use that as my pattern. Pretty much anything you got laying around that's round. But that just seemed to be about pretty much the right dimensions. You know what? This really sucks. I upgraded my audio to a wireless system, and I'm pissed off because now I just lost so much audio. I really thought it was working, but whatever. So now I gotta order something else. I gotta figure out how to do better audio. But with the handle, what I did here is I just kind of figured out a measurement, used my hand as the actual gauge to see how long a handle should be, and then I more or less just free-handed it in. You don't have to get super fancy. I like free-handing stuff. I don't like using patterns. I like having everything being relatively unique. Yeah, see, like right there. I'm just using my hand as a general guide. Marking it down, blah, 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 whatever. It's like, whatever it takes to make something look decent. I should probably talk more because I let this run on too long.
Alright, so I got my router table set up here with a 1/4 inch round over bit. Alright, they're all rounded over, basically finished. We have one last little step that we're going to do to make these things look like a hill rise, or look like hills with the sun rising up over top of them. So we need a Forstner bit. my set of Forstner bits over here. Figure out what sizes we want. I think that one, I don't know. We'll use that one for that one. I've got a bigger one over here. Got that one there. So we've got a 1.5" Forstner bit that we're going to use on the cheese board. This is an 1 3/4" that we're going to use on the cutting board. Raise it up to where it's just about there. All right. Now we need to set our depth. We don't want to go all the way through. We want to go approximately halfway, right about there. Oh, let's see. I want my sun rising up between these last little hills, so I'm going to kind of set it right about there. All right, so now we got a nice little indent in there. Let's swap this out, and we'll do the cutting board. All right, now we got them Forstner bit holes drilled. What we need is another piece of walnut and a piece of ash and a circle template. The cheese one here, this was an 1.5" hole. Get your circle template out. Got your 1.5" hole right there. Find a corner that you like grain in. Sorry. That was a mistake. We don't need that one. We need the 1.5" in the walnut. Walnut ash. If I put ash in here, that would have been just stupid. So we need the 1.5" hole on the walnut. And then this was our 1 3/4. So we want 1 3/4 right there. That will go on the ash. That damn attention to detail. The bandsaw real quick, and I'm going to do a quick rough cut on these. Got my center. All right, to make these things circle to where they'll fit down in here, what we got to do is we need to drill a shallow hole into this with a 3/16 drill bit, because I have a jig set up over here that has a little tiny 3/16 dowel rod already drilled and put down in there. We drill this hole dead center. This board will sit down onto that dowel rod and it won't move. And then we can clamp this onto the belt sander, or the disc sander I should say, and then we can just rotate it, slide it in, rotate it, and we'll get a perfectly circular disc out of it. And then you just sneak up on the sides and you just keep testing and testing and testing until it's an absolutely perfect freaking tight fit and you can hammer in there. So let me go drill these out real quick and then we'll start shaping them. Okay, so we got the little hole drilled, and you just want it to be very, 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 very shallow. Because I don't know how well you can see that or not, but this dowel rod just barely sticks up above the surface. It's just enough to hold that in place. We'll push it up against the disc sander and we'll turn it and we'll get a nice perfect freaking circle. All right. We got the ash done. That one is extremely nice fit. We put a little bit of glue on here, and we take belt sander and we sand that off flush. So let's go ahead and stick that one in. Like I said, check and check often, because this is my third freaking attempt. I screwed up the first two because I got a little too aggressive. Actually, I got a little too aggressive. I'd like this to have been a little bit tighter, but we'll put some glue on there and you'll never freaking know. Now, pay attention to your grain orientation. Make sure your ash grain is going in the same direction, otherwise it'll just look funky. Oh, I'm falling! Let's get a rag and wipe off that excess. It's starting to look like some. Now we'll just gotta let that dry. Now we can do the walnut for this one. And we'll be done for the day. We gotta let that glue set up. All right, there we are. We got our cutting board and our cheese board. I went ahead and did all the sanding and everything off camera because it's sanding. If you've gotten to this point, I bet you can figure out how to use a sander. It's start with 80 grit, 150 grit, 220 grit. Wet the board down between each of your grits because that helps bring the grain back up and it makes the next grit actually sand quicker, more efficiently, and does a better job. As far as the sun and moon or whatever you might want to call these little circles, they were standing rather proud off of the actual surface. How to grind them down smooth, the way I do it, just a belt sander. I got an 80 grit sanding disc in this. Set it on there and just let it grind, let it do its work. It takes roughly about 2 minutes per disc to get them down pretty flush. And just when you get down really close to the surface, you got to really get down there and pay attention. Make sure that you're not grinding some sort of divot into your board. It's not overly hard to do though. You just sit there and just pay close attention to how it's grinding. Once it's down relatively smooth, then you switch over to your oscillating sander and hit it with the 80 grit and go around and finish up all the sanding. Now that the sanding is done, we can't just take this in and use it. Food particles, moisture, everything will soak into this. So we have to do what they call seasoning the cutting board. And what we got to do with that is we have to use mineral oil to season these things to get a moisture barrier on it. What I use, this is not a paid freaking advertisement or anything. It's just, this is what the woodworking store in my area, I mean, it's a 60-mile one-way drive to get there. This is what they had on the shelf. It's called cutting board oil. All it is just mineral oil. Any mineral oil will work. It just has to be a food grade mineral oil because, of course, it's a cutting board. You don't want to go and grab some 10W40 or something for your freaking car and dump on here and expect to season it. It might make your food taste like crap and probably kill you too. But just get some mineral oil, food grade mineral oil, and what we're going to do, we're going to take a rag and we're going to wipe it on here. Wipe it with the grain like you would a stain or polyurethane or anything like that. And you let it sit for about 20 minutes and it's going to soak in. That first layer, it's really going to soak in and you'll actually see dry spots. And with a brand new board, you want to do 3 to 4 coats. I usually do my cutting boards 4 coats. And then you want to come back, periodically every 3, 4, 5 months, whatever, and just put a quick layer of this stuff on. It helps just seal it. These things aren't meant to just take it and throw it in a sink full of water and let it sit overnight. You'll ruin them. But with this stuff on there, it's going to be perfectly safe to go ahead and wash it. Plus, once we put this on here, the grain is going to really pop out and it's going to make these things look way cooler than they do now. So just get a nice lint-free cloth. Put a little oil on here. Now look at how much freaking cooler that looks with that oil on there. These I use as my little drying racks. These are just dowel rods. They are the handles off of foamy paintbrushes. When I'm done using the foamy paintbrush, I just snap the handle off, and they come in real handy for things like this because they have a minimal surface area. Set your project on and let it dry. There we go. I still got to do 3 more coats, but these are essentially done. I don't know why, but this little cheese board, summer sausage cutting board, whatever, I like this thing, especially since this was just a scrap cut off from making my cutting board. This is just going to get thrown over in the scrap bin and used to turn in, maybe make pin blanks or something. I just like how this frickin' turned out of just the cut-offs. I'm really happy with that. So we just let these dry for about 20 minutes, let that oil soak in. Do 3 more coats. And they're done. Before I say freaking bye for today, I want to show one more thing. I just finished up this flag right here. It is the 13-star Betsy Ross original colonial flag. My brother wanted a flag. He really liked the one I made with the 50 stars and everything on there, but he asked me if I could make the original colonial flag. And I was like, so, I got thinking, I gotta charge you the same amount of money that I charge for the other flags. I only got to do 13 stars. I got to grind 13 stars out as opposed to 50. So I get to shave about an hour and a half of time off of my project. It's like, shit, yeah, I can make you a flag. So this is his flag. I hope he doesn't watch this video. But I hope you like my cutting board, my cheese board. If you did, go ahead and subscribe. If you didn't like it, go ahead and subscribe anyways, because I'm going to have something else next week and something else after that. Turn on notifications. Hit like. I'll see you next time.